What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the We Run on Coffee podcast with Marissa and Arika. Today we have a brand new type of episode for you guys. We are doing a book club and we're so excited.
I'm so excited about this.
How are you this week, Marissa?
I'm pretty good. I was a little bit tired all week. I wasn't able to get to bed at my normal time with my new schedule, so I was a little bit sleepy all week, but it's okay.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. For the past 2 weeks, I've worked on the couch because I work from home. I've worked on the couch every single day and been so tired every single day. I don't know if it's the weather's changing so much because it's about to be spring. And it's just I don't know. It's taken a toll on me. It's so weird.
I've just been so sleepy. I just want to lay in bed all day.
Mood. Literally mood. Well, tell me what you've been up to this week. I'm really excited to hear about the Cherry Blossom Festival.
Yeah.
And all of the things you told us about last week.
It was so fun. So we ended up metroing into the city last weekend, and we just kind of walked around. We ended up over by the White House, and we thought that it was going to be barricaded off because anytime that me and my friends that moved here last summer have been up there, it's been barricaded off and you can't really get up to the fence like you normally can. But it was open this weekend. We could walk right up to the fence area, and it was really cool.
Crazy.
And I actually saw something on TikTok, I think, that they were having garden tours of the White House. You could
that would be so
you could
cool.
sign up and you could go behind the gate and do garden tours on the lawn of the White House. And I was like, I kind of want to do that. That sounds so fun. But it was beautiful. We just we went to this place for brunch, and it was so yummy. And our server was so funny. He kept telling us, these dad jokes, and it was hilarious. And then
your outfit was fire.
Thank
the pictures
you.
were amazing. I was shook.
You.
I should tell you, I was showing everyone the pictures you sent me I was at dinner with Angelo and his mom and his siblings, And so I was like, guys, Marissa just sent me pictures, and they were looking at them. She's like, she looks stunning. Oh my God, she looks so amazing. It was so cute.
That's so funny because
they loved it.
I mean, as we know, I'm not a very pink girly. That jacket I was wearing in those photos is literally the only pink thing that I own. And I told everybody the day before, I was like, all right, pink theme, we're wearing something springy. And they were like, what? I was like, we're going to the cherry blossoms. We have to wear pink. And so we all took pictures around the cherry blossoms. We went to brunch, and then we went to this little hole in the wall bar, and the bartender was so funny. He was so nice. And he was like, if you bring me up all of your glasses, I'm going to buy your drink. And I was like, okay. So I brought up all the glasses, and he bought me a drink, and then somebody else did it for the next round. And we just kept buying each other rounds of drinks because it was easier. Yeah. But it was really fun. And I had a lot of fun just being there and walking around the city.
That's so cute. Yeah. All of your guys' pictures were so adorable. Some of your friends I had followed a little while back, but then after the Cherry Blossom Festival, some of your friends followed me on Instagram. So now I feel like I've seen you all, and I've seen all of your group pictures, and they were just so perfect. I loved that you guys did a pink theme, actually. It looked so good.
Thank you. It was so much fun.
It looked fun.
Well, after that exciting weekend, I went back to work this week, but I did do a couple of fun things this week. So on Monday, I think that this is fun. I went to Costco for the first time, and it was an experience. It was so cool. My friend Mara, she has a membership through her family, and she was like, we're going to Costco after work, and I was like, can I come? And so we went to Costco. I got some snacks and stuff, and it was just cool just to walk around there. And I told Kyle we have to get a membership when he moves in.
So fun. We're a big Sam's Club fan because Sam's Club's right by my house. We don't really have Costco close, but those stores are the best.
Yeah.
I don't know why, this is so random, but I was just telling Angelo yesterday we need to go back and we buy the Lysol wipes from Sam's Club. They come with 6 of those big bottles in one pack, and it just gives me life. I'm like, they last for a whole year.
Yeah.
I just love that.
And getting your dry, not your dry goods, your plastic bags and your, I don't know, paper plates and stuff. It's just so easy.
And efficient and cheap. And they also have, I don't know if they have them at Costco, but at Sam's Club we found these really good granola bars that are fairly healthy, not a lot of those weird chemicals in them, and a lot of fruits and vegetables and stuff, and they were actually so delicious.
Really?
Some of the best ones I've ever had. And they had a big huge box. It was $10 for this massive box that lasted us a month or two. I was like, this is the best. But yeah, those stores are great. Also, they have good clothes.
Yeah, they do.
Underestimated.
Yeah.
Some of my best clothes are from Sam's Club.
Yeah, just getting some leggings or some jackets.
Yes,
it's worth it. Yes.
I have this one sweatshirt, and it is my favorite ever.
Oh.
It got it for $4 or something like that.
That's crazy.
I love it.
But
well, that's really fun. I'm so glad you got to experience Costco.
Yeah, I loved it. I am definitely getting a membership, and I will be back. What else did I do this week? On Wednesday, I went and I played volleyball with some friends after work. Like, not in my actual league, but I just, like, played volleyball with some friends after work at, like, these sand volleyball courts we found, and that was really fun. And then what did we do? On Thursday, me and Arika talked. We did some behind-the-scenes pod things that we're super excited about.
Some secret plotting.
I know. And then on Friday, my air conditioning finally got fixed temporarily. So basically, I'm going to say a whole bunch of things that I don't even understand really quickly, but whatever. So my relay switch is bad. I don't know what that means, but anybody out there that knows anything about mechanics or anything about apartments, my relay switch is bad. So that basically means that my hot water that makes the heater work is going to the air conditioning. And so it starts out cold for like 30 seconds, and then the water hits the pipe and it gets like hotter. And they were like, okay, this is weird. So they turned off the hot water tank, like where it goes into the heating and cooling system. And since they turned that switch off, my heat doesn't work, which is fine because it's hot out. And so now my air conditioning finally works.
Okay, that is so weird.
Yeah, but they're ordering the part and it'll eventually be fixed fully. Hopefully.
That'll be nice.
Yes.
It's so weird that you say that's fine because it's hot here. It's so cold here.
It
has not been hot here.
It was 77 here yesterday.
Oh, God, you're living my dreams. It was like 40 here yesterday.
That's wild.
Holy crap. I can't believe it differs that much. I would never.
It's going to be 83 times this week here.
I could cry. I can't wait to visit.
It'll be so fun. It'll be fun.
That's so nice.
And then what else? Yeah. Oh, yesterday I did overtime and then I got my nails done. They're a light blue now. Yes.
Wait, hold on. I got to make your little screen bigger because we're on Zoom. Oh my gosh, that's a cute color.
Yes. Kyle told me he wanted me to get baby blue and he sent me a picture.
That's so
I was
cute.
like, I don't want to think about picking a color. Just like send me a color.
Yeah.
So he sent me like baby blue and I was like, will you find like a picture on Google because like I just want to be able to like color match it. And he was like, yeah, sure. So he sent me a picture. I was like, yay, I got new nails.
That's so funny. Angela's favorite color for me to do on my nails is my least favorite color ever.
What is
red.
it? Oh.
But I did it for Valentine's Day as a surprise because I was like, Valentine's Day red, like it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I got red. And he was like, oh my gosh, those are the best nails ever. Like they're just plain red. I was like, why are you so obsessed? It was so funny.
That's so silly.
But yeah, that's so cute. I have still my pink ones, but we're kind of matching with the pastel tones.
Yeah,
so I like that.
I love it.
Very spring.
Yeah, of course. What did you do this week?
I had an eventful week.
Yes.
I did not.
Oh,
like
no.
I said, I've been working on the couch every day, but I do have a couple updates. So I have an update for both of us that I want to share with the class. Everybody, we got our first ad. Woo! That's something that happened this week that I was really excited to share. So thank you for listening, because if you weren't listening, we wouldn't have gotten one.
No.
So that's very exciting.
Yes.
Second thing is that I started How to Get Away with Murder.
Yay.
And I'm on season 2. I watched it really fast.
Do you love it?
So I'm medium on it. I was telling Angela, I was like, I feel bad telling Marissa my true thoughts because she recommended it.
No, tell me.
No, I mostly like it. I think the storyline's pretty good. And I'm like actually pretty surprised at most things that happen. I'm like, it's not super predictable, but I don't think I love a drama show.
Okay.
Like just the way it's filmed or like the setting. Like for instance, the Grey's Anatomy's, it's almost like an elevated soap opera vibe.
Yeah.
So like that.
I love it.
Show, that's like, I think I don't like it. I don't know. I made it through season 1 pretty fast and I was like, this is pretty good. And then I got to season 2 and I'm like, I just don't know if I like how it's filmed, but I do like the story. So I might still finish it.
Yeah.
I want to know what happens.
Yeah, of course.
So I've been liking it though.
Okay.
Not too harsh.
Okay.
Not too harsh of a criticism, I promise. And then my third update is something that we talked about in last week's episode in my Arika hour, but I am getting a patio estimate today to see how much it'll cost to get a patio. So that's happening tonight. I wish it was earlier so I could have give you guys a better update.
That's
but
okay.
hopefully next week
I'll
be able to tell you how much it's going to cost. It's going to be expensive.
That's okay.
But I am excited.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all of my week's updates. I'm really excited for today's episode, but before we dive in, what are you drinking?
I got this lavender syrup for my coffee, and we know I'm a lavender latte lover.
Of course.
So I got this new cup, and I already showed Arika, but it is a cherry blossom themed Starbucks cup, and it says like Washington DC in like silver foil writing, and it's just so cute. It's like all pink, and of course still not a pink girl, but I love the cherry blossoms, and I think it's so cute.
Yeah.
So I have my iced lavender latte. It's oat milk, the lavender syrup, and then my double espresso dolce.
I love that it's lavender in a flower cup. It's just giving all the spring vibes right now.
I had to.
Yeah, I love that for you. I'm excited because we're recording so early today, guys, earlier than normal. So I'm still on my first cup of coffee. I didn't have to make a new one for this, which is exciting. But I made I have my cute love mug that my cousins Sydney and Madeline gave me. Shout out, girls. But yeah, it's a brown sugar with what do I use? The double espresso Chiaro pod from Nespresso. So mixed that with brown sugar while it was hot, and then I added ice, a little bit of oat milk, and the silk oat creamer in the oatmeal cookie flavor.
Ooh.
I love that creamer.
Yeah.
It's so good. So that's what I'm drinking this morning.
Yummy.
And then, of course, I don't know about you, but the water.
Yep, I got my water right here. I got my water to the right and my coffee to the left.
I love that for you. So, okay, now that we're all caught up, let's dive in.
Yay.
I am so excited for this because Marissa and I are both big reading gals.
Yes.
And we have this love for reading that we share. So we thought it'd be really fun to do book club episodes. Thanks to Marissa for this idea, of course. And we're doing our first one on the book I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jenette McCurdy. And before we dive into all of the content for today, I want to give a disclaimer / content warning. We're going to talk about a lot of serious stuff like eating disorders, sexual abuse, mental abuse, death, etc. So if you are not cool with listening to that or that does not sit well with you, feel free to click off. We will not be offended.
Nope, not at all.
These are totally triggering for a lot of people, so feel empowered to skip this episode. We understand.
Yes. All
good there. Second disclaimer, I want to shout out our sources because none of the questions I pulled today are original content. I did not create any of them because I just, my brain wasn't really doing that. It was like not coming up with nothing. So I want to shout out our sources very quickly. I used Mimi Blog, Libra Maniacs, Book Clubs, Super Summary, and SB Howell. Oh, and Badass Women's Book Club, which I really want to look that up more because it seems like a really cool website.
Yeah.
But those are the sources I used for the questions. And finally, the last thing before we really dive into our thoughts is that I thought it would be nice to read a summary of the book to you all listeners in case you haven't listened to this or read this, book. Also, side note, apparently Jenette McCurdy did the audio for the audiobook version.
Ooh.
Which I did not know.
That's so
and
cool.
I kind of wish I knew that because on one of the websites it said, did you listen to this book in audio format? And if so, what did you think about Jenette McCurdy's inflection or not performance, but the way that she read it? And I was like, dang it, I almost wish, I never am into audiobooks, but I almost wish I listened to that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you could really hear her story if she was speaking it to you.
Yeah, and especially all of her emotion and stuff behind it, because some of the parts in the book are really deep and really heavy. So I feel like you could hear almost her breaking that character of the audiobook reader and 100%. Starting to crack underneath the pressure of coming over, going over it all again.
I definitely cried reading this book at some points, and I think if I read the audiobook, it would have been way worse. A wreck. But it was still a good book nonetheless. And like I said, readers, LOL. Like I said, listeners, if you have not read the book, I'm going to give you a quick summary. So I timed myself reading this. It's only about 3 minutes. I promise it'll be quick. So Jenette McCurdy lives in Garden Grove with her parents, maternal grandparents, and her 3 older brothers. She has an extremely close relationship with her mother, who was diagnosed with cancer years ago but is in remission. At the age of 6 years old, Jenette began her acting career at the behest of her mother, whose dream was to be an actress. Jenette is disinterested in acting, but feels that her purpose in life is to make sure that her mother is happy and calm. For several years, Jenette acts in small roles in commercials and television shows. After struggling with anxiety over auditions, she develops a voice in her head that she attributes to the Holy Spirit. This voice instructs her to perform certain rituals that calm her down. When Jenette's grandfather suggests that Jenette might have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, her mother is dismissive. After noticing that her body is changing, Jenette fears that she is growing up and will no longer be cast in children's roles. She worries that she'll disappoint her mother, so she asks her mother how she can stop her body from changing, and her mother teaches her about calorie restriction. Jenette lands a leading role on the Nickelodeon show iCarly. She plays Sam Puckett, the blunt best friend of Carly Shay. Side note, did not know Carly had a last name. Carly. She and her co-star develop a strong friendship that despite their different She and her co-star developed a strong friendship despite their different socioeconomic backgrounds. Tongue twister. The show's creator, Dan Schneider, is known for being emotionally manipulative and aggressive. iCarly finds success and Jenette pursues a country music career at the behest of her mother. Jenette's mother's cancer returns as she is about to promote her album. She goes on tour alone, and while away from her mother for the first time, she begins eating in excess. She also has her first real kiss. When she returns, she's gained weight and her mother has become frail. She vows to her mother that she will diet. She gets her own apartment closer to set, but her mother reacts to the attempt at distance by sleeping at Jenette's apartment almost every night. Jenette begins dating a much older coworker, but keeps it a secret from her mother, who she knows would not approve. Her mother senses that Jenette is hiding something from her and that they are growing apart, and she responds with violence and name-calling. When she discovers the relationship, Jenette's mother sends her a barrage of abusive emails that attack Jenette's character and declare her worthless, and when Jenette returns to her mother, they pretend it never happened. Jenette's mother continues to grow weaker, and Jenette begins binge eating and drinking. And on the day her mother finally dies, Jenette is numb with alcohol. Jenette develops bulimia. While on set for a new TV show in Canada, she falls in love with an assistant director named Steven. After discovering her eating disorder, he delivers an ultimatum that forces Jenette to meet a therapist. However, when her therapist expresses concern about Jenette's relationship with her mother, she fires her. Stephen becomes a born-again Christian and expresses a desire to be celibate. Jenette grows further dissatisfied in her career. She meets up with her father, who confesses to her that he is not her biological father. Shocked, Jenette tries to talk to Stephen, only to find that he has begun suffering from the delusion that he is Jesus Christ. Jenette realizes that her life is falling apart and seeks new treatment for her eating disorder. And finally, Stephen begins psychiatric medication and seems to be doing much better, but refuses to address his chronic drug use. As Jenette succeeds in recovery, she finds herself growing further apart from him. Ultimately, she chooses to break things off. As she continues to improve and develop healthier habits, she meets her biological father and steps away from acting. So that's the summary I have from us. That was verbatim from Super Summary. I did not write that. And I will also say that that's definitely not the whole book. I feel like that gives us a good picture, but oh my God, like even just reading it now, I can't believe so much went on in this
All
book.
of that happened.
All of that and more.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine. It's almost like you learn of different things throughout your life. It's like you learn about OCD and people who suffer with that and how hard that is. Or you learn about depression and how hard that is. And you learn about addiction and how hard that is. And then you put it all in one girl.
No, literally.
A teenager.
Yeah.
I'm like, I do not seriously know how she lived with that, because one of those things is hard to live with.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually insane. And I don't know. Even reading the summary, Marissa and I read this book a while back, so we both had to re-summarize this
yeah.
one too to catch back up, and I forgot about
all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I remember a few key parts, but I forgot about almost everything. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, it really is scary, because like you think about like, I mean, the title itself is shocking. Like, I'm glad my mom died. And then you read it and you're like, okay, I know that this is a memoir going into it. And then you start reading and it's like, it's from that first person perspective at some points, but it's also like Jenette's taking a step out of her life and like talking about it as if she was like an outsider. And it's like, it's cool to see that. But even though she's talking about some of the parts as an outsider, you have to remember, like, she did live through all of that. And those are things that affected her to be who she is now.
Yeah, it's literally, I don't know. It's insane. So we're going to dive in with some questions. I'm going to guide us through some questions I found on all those websites I mentioned. But first, I want to talk about like our background with Jenette McCurdy in general. So I want to talk about, what do we know her from, and were we a fan of hers? I want to take it away.
Yeah, I basically only knew her from iCarly, and
same.
I mean, like, I didn't really know that she was like really in anything else. And like reading the book, like I noticed like she had a bunch of smaller roles and stuff, and like she was in like stuff later in her life as well. But I really only ever watched iCarly and saw her in that. And I mean, I guess I would say I was a fan of hers. I didn't watch the show religiously, but it was more of like, oh, I know that face. I know who that is.
Yeah. For sure. I feel like most of us have definitely seen her face. And of course, iCarly was her breakout role, so that makes sense. I only know her from that as well. And then I'm going to say the next question before I answer. did she play a part in our childhood? So depending on your age, you might have grown up idealizing Jenette McCurdy, or you may have never heard of her. How did this affect your reading of the book? So I will say I know her from iCarly too. I was actually, this is crazy, maybe unpopular opinion, but I was like an anti-fan.
Really?
I really did not like her character on iCarly. I didn't relate to her. I felt like, I don't know, as a kid, I never related to like, I don't know, her character was very obnoxious. Like they made it to be that she was very obnoxious, very crazy, very obsessed with food, which was a big part in the book, is that her character was so obsessed with food, etc. But I found her character to be so obnoxious that I like didn't like the character, which was honestly an unpopular opinion, I think, of people my age, because most people I know, that was their favorite character. Like they loved Sam. She was so relatable, so funny, so realistic, but I was kind of an anti-fan. And then to answer how did this affect your reading of the book, I mean, the book just turned me into a fan. I feel like I totally like respect and love her, and I feel like she's so cool and she's done so much that I think she's really inspiring. So it was cool to see the girl behind the act, you know, like the character. Yeah. Because her character isn't who she is at all.
Yeah, I think that I kind of agree. Like I said, like, I don't know. I feel like I didn't really watch iCarly. Like, it wasn't like the show that I would like turn on. But I also
Same.
I didn't have cable when I was younger, so I can't I can't remember like when I had it, like versus when the show was on and like what I actually watched.
We probably both watched like the reruns.
Yeah.
Like, after it was out.
Probably. But I feel like I mean, like, I was, like, not a fan, but also I wasn't, like, a super fan, you know? So
I'm right there with you.
I feel like I had a really neutral, like, headspace going into the book because I was like, well, I know that she was on iCarly, and that's, like, it. And like, the only things that I knew about her, like, as a human was that she was on iCarly, and then she didn't come back for the reunion, and that was all that I knew.
Yes. That's right. That makes sense. I'm totally with you there. And this is a tangent because what is our podcast without one? We also didn't have cable when I was growing up, like ever. But I remember at one point we had like the antenna. I don't know if you ever had. Excuse me. I just choked. I was getting too excited. Okay. So if you ever had the antenna, you could get like a couple channels, right? So we had the antenna, and I remember the first time I told Angela's family this, they thought it was crazy, but I used to come downstairs and turn on the TV and like see what I could watch with the antenna. And I literally, my mom would come down and I'd be watching poker, like because there was nothing on TV, like a little kid watching poker, because that's all that was on TV. It was so funny.
We had like just like whatever the box was, like whatever channels you could get with the box, and then my grandma moved in maybe when I was like 14, we got like Netflix. Like when Netflix started getting bigger, like we got that. And so I was able to like watch some shows like throughout like high school and stuff. Yeah. And then when I was 16, my grandma moved in with us, and she was like, I'm not moving in unless you get cable because I cannot live here if I don't have my shows. Like, you know, those like 70 to 80-year-old women that are like, shows. She's like, I gotta have my programs. And I'm like, okay, grandma.
The program.
Yes.
Hand me the clicker. I'm watching my program.
No, literally. That was my grandma. And so like my dad was like, I don't know, like I guess it's something that we can like choose to pay for now, which my grandma moving in was like wild because we got cable and we got air conditioning because she said that she wasn't living in a house that didn't have air conditioning.
Grandma has standards.
She did.
That is honestly, you know, that's empowering in itself.
Yeah.
Go grandma.
Yeah, go grandma.
That's so funny. Okay, so aside from my tangent, on to the next question. I want to ask, and I have an answer ready, so if you don't, I can go.
Okay.
But there were many red flags of abuse throughout the book. Which one stood out to you the most?
I feel like the one that was the most shocking to me. Like I saw all the red flags. Like they kept popping up. Even
I feel like the book was a red flag.
Yeah, even from like that first page, like when she was talking about like everything. But I think the thing that stood out to me the most was like when they were talking about the showering and how her mom would like inspect her body up until the age of like 16. And I understand her mom being worried because she was like a breast cancer survivor that turned into more cancer later. But at the same time, that's a child that's growing up, and like I don't know, like you just like you get like not conscious of your body, but you're like, this is mine, I don't want to show anybody else. And
a young girl, she was the only girl in her family, so it's probably like she didn't have anyone to relate to either, like a sister.
And so she had to just like kind of take it in stride, but at the same time, like it was like that was like the weirdest thing to me that I thought was the biggest red flag, because I was like, well, that's pretty abusive, because you're literally, I mean, almost to a point, sexually abusing your child because you're looking at them naked in the shower and inspecting every part of their body.
Oh my God, it's making me feel like,
Yeah.
The whole book kind of made me feel like that in a way, which is honestly why, in my opinion, I think this book is so good, because it makes you think about things that you would never, I don't know, think about. But I kind of forgot about that, and that was like a main, main whatever storyline, was the showering thing. Yeah, that was really weird.
Yeah. What was your big red flag that you saw in it?
So mine, and I don't know why, but this one just really stuck with me, and I don't think it was a super big plot, but I don't know. It was the fact that her meaning Jenette, and her brothers would sleep in the living room on a gymnastics mat from Costco. Yeah. That like just put a pit in my stomach, and the whole time I read the rest of the book I thought about that, and even after, like, that's the one thing I remembered, is that her and her brothers literally slept on like one of those gymnast mats from Costco in the living room of, if I remember correctly, their house was almost like a hoarder house.
Yeah, and that's why they slept on the mats, because her mom had used their bedrooms and their beds to store her things.
It just breaks my heart. I don't know, something about that. I think like in life, one of the most vulnerable like places you can be in is in sleep. Yeah. And I think it's so important to be comfortable and also feel safe when you're asleep, and the fact that they had to sleep there. And I remember one chapter they were talking about how they were sleeping on the living room floor on their mat, and everyone was like up getting ready for church and the hustle and bustle and like waking them up. And I don't know, it just, I hate it. Yeah. I literally hate it.
And also like a place that you go to be alone is your own bedroom, and like you can close the door and you can lay in bed and you can be vulnerable by yourself. Yeah. And her not having that, and like her brother's not having that either, and having to have those vulnerable moments out in the open, and maybe feeling like stifled in their emotions because they couldn't have a place to retreat if they felt overwhelmed.
They didn't have, not they, but she didn't have a safe place until she literally had her own apartment. Yeah. I can't imagine that feeling. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then
the feeling of never slamming the door of your bedroom, like when you're mad.
And then like even when she did get her own apartment, which we'll get into, like she didn't really get that place to herself either. Yeah. So she like honestly, up until her mom died, she didn't have a moment of like solitude.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, because I don't remember if it's something I wrote in the questions or not, but we could talk about it now. Is that when she got her apartment, her mom visited, I'm doing air quotes, but never left. Yeah. Like, she came, she's like, let's do a movie night, let's spend the night, I really miss you. And Jenette felt bad, so she was like, yeah, I guess like you can come spend the night, whatever. And she just kept spending the night over and over and over, and she kind of guilt tripped her because she was sick, you know, she was hurting, whatever. And inevitably she moved in with Jenette at her new apartment.
Yeah. And I feel like that's even another red flag of abuse in the book as well, because like she finally gets enough money to move out and be on her own and live in her own place and become that independent woman that she's been striving to be. And literally the day she moves in, her mom moves in with her.
Just follows her. Yeah. Oh, it's so sad. So moving along, my next question is child acting unethical? And hypothetically, if you had a child or something like that, something similar, would you let them become a child actress or actor?
I think that it can be unethical, but I also think that it can't be on this, like at the same time. Like, I feel like if the child is coming to you and requesting to do this kind of thing, and they say, Mom, Dad, I really think that this would be fun, I would enjoy doing this, then of course, like if you're in the means to support that for your kid, go ahead. But also on the same side of that, you have to make sure that the roles that they're getting cast in and the things that they are doing are also ethical, because a lot of times directors and stuff, I've heard many horror stories of them exploiting the child and abusing them as well. Like in this book, like a lot of her directors or the producers used her and like exploited her and like abused her as well. So I think that it's a really fine line, and I think you're probably safer than sorry, like not doing it. But at the same time, if a kid shows that genuine interest and thinks like, hey Mom, I would really love to do this, I think that you can try and support them as best as you can and make sure that they are safe throughout the process.
Yeah, for sure. I agree mostly. I think the question is child acting unethical? No, not explicitly. Yeah. Like, it can be and it can't be, just like you said, like the exact same thing you said. It could be unethical. It could also be perfectly fine if you have boundaries or you're a strong person. But when you start at the age that she did, like 6 years old, I think, or even younger, she started doing commercials and stuff. That is a toddler.
Yeah.
Like, and when you start as a toddler, it's so different.
And it was against her will as well. It wasn't her dream. So I think that that's a really big topic of conversation now, especially with like people our age. Like a lot of people our age, their parents pushed them to do things that they didn't so that they could like live through like vicariously through their child. And I think that a lot of people our age, like especially people that I know that are like starting to have kids and stuff, like giving their kid that independent lifestyle of getting to pick what they want and not forcing them into a sport, a career, a hobby, and just letting them become the human that they want to be. I think that that's a really big topic of conversation now.
I agree. And to answer the question, like, would you let your child become a child actor or actress? I would say like maybe. The same thing you said. If like I had a kid and they came to me and they were like, this is my dream, mom, like I have to be an actress, like I've always wanted to do this since I was a little kid, and I could see that and that made sense to me, I would totally want to be supportive. But I think for me and personally, I would find it to be like my job to make sure that they're protected. So I would almost have to give up my time and like something that I'm doing. For instance, if I were working or whatever, maybe I would have to like sacrifice something from my life to be able to put the time in and like go with them to auditions, be with them all the time, never leave them alone in a room with someone I don't know. Like that stuff would be priority for me. So would I let them? Yes, but like I would have to give up a lot of myself to make sure they're protected, and I think that's important for people to realize too.
Yeah, and like drawing that back to the book, you would want to be there for your child, but maybe not in the as severe aspect as Jenette's mom, like going into the audition with them, like allowing them that space to show their talent and letting them go into that audition room,
build confidence,
but at the same time like wanting to be with them like immediately after. Like you have to draw that line of like the privacy that the directors and the producers are wanting to have with that child, because that is their time to shine. And if they see their parents sitting in the corner, it's going to kind of hinder that. But 100%. If I mean, I understand like wanting to be with them, and like if I ever like had a child that wanted to do this, like I would also want to feel like I am protecting them and I'm putting my life out there to be supportive and protective and whatever. But at the same time, like you have to draw that line of like, I don't want to seem like the overbearing helicopter parent that Jenette's mom was.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of that, it reminded me of when Jenette's mom would always go on set with her, not only like you said in auditions or in her trailer or whatever, monitoring everything, but also I remember this big theme around, which the whole book has a big theme around food, but I remember Jenette's mom being super anal about what she ate on set. And like I have actually this one page pulled up from Super Summary that I was reading because I thought this was really crazy. When Jenette was getting gift baskets from like co-stars or whatever, I remember her mom would like raid them and take out all the stuff that she quote couldn't eat, and then sometimes her mom would eat it. Sometimes her mom would be like, you can't eat this, so I'll eat it.
Which, I mean, that's another big red flag of abuse in the whole book. Like, I don't know if it's in one of these questions because I wanted to be surprised by these questions.
No, it's good.
I know that one point in time, like, when she started to notice the changes of her body and she was just going through puberty like every human does, and she started to notice, like, breast development and her stomach getting a little bit looser because she's getting bigger or whatever, she went to her mom and was like, how can I, like, not become a woman because I want to be a child forever? And her mom was like, there's this wonderful thing called Weight Watchers, and there's this wonderful thing called calorie restriction. And her mom was definitely anorexic in the entire book because she talks about how she would eat like a piece of lettuce for dinner. I know that's over exaggerating, but it was basically what she was eating. And she would be like, well, you know what, Jenette, like I can make a dinner for us both, like what I would normally eat, and we can split it between the two of us because that makes it better for both of us.
That's makes me sad because it's like if your child comes to you and asks like, how do I not become a woman, you would think that the response would hopefully be, becoming a woman is a great thing. This is why.
This is just how we grow up.
So it was really sad to see the mom like kind of manipulate her in a way and like play on the fact that she was like in a vulnerable position to where she could convince her to start losing weight.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I feel so touchy using the word manipulate, but like she definitely was.
She was definitely a big master manipulator in Jenette's life. And something else that I remembered, like going over this and like the red flags and stuff, when she was younger and she was going to these auditions, she would pick the clothing for her child to wear to be a child actress. Literally a child, like auditioning for children's roles. You can't play a 15-year-old if you're 6. Like you can't do that. But she would put her in like these quote unquote slutty outfits. Like she would put her in like a bikini top and like short shorts or like something that was like more promiscuous as like a child. Like if you're 15 and you're going out for like a beach movie, like yes, wear a bikini top. But like at the same time, you're 6 years old, you're not going to get that kind of role. You're going to play the child. And her doing that, and then like one of the producers was like, well, her hair isn't blonde enough, so her mom gave her highlights at 6 years old, and she was so like crazy. She's blonde, she doesn't have enough eyelashes, so her mom would like paint her with makeup and mascara and all of these things. And she was 6, she just wanted to play in the dirt like we all did. Like that was it.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how little of a childhood she had, like a true childhood where you didn't, I mean, she's just been working since she can remember her life. So that's a lot to deal with. But my next question, I'm really excited to ask you this, is the title of the book, I'm Glad My Mom Died, Turn On or Turn Off? And why do you think she chose the title?
I'm going to start with why I think she chose the title. So I think she chose it because it was such a shock value. Like you see that and you're going to be like, clickbait. You're literally going to be like, oh wow, like why is she glad her mom died? And like, I feel like bits and pieces of her story have come out over the years, especially as she's kind of stepped away from her acting career and everything.
For sure.
But I think like you see that on a shelf and it's a bright yellow book and she's wearing this bright pink blazer. Like you see
holding the urn.
Yes.
Literally.
You see like the whole thing and you're like, oh wow, like that seems so encapsulating and like you want to learn why she put that. And I think it was a turn on for myself and a turn on for most people because you're like, well, what the heck happened? Like what made you feel like you're happy that your mom died? Like what?
Right. Yeah. I'm actually glad you said that, and I thought that would be an unpopular opinion, but I feel the exact same way. I think it was a turn on. It made me very intrigued. Whether or not it gave me happy feelings is beyond the point because I was like very interested. And that's exactly what it needs to do. And it's kind of like one of those things, it's like don't judge a book by its cover. It was really easy to judge this book by its cover and be like, yeah, I need to read that because what does that mean?
But also at the same time, I think that she had to have something with shock value because she's kind of been like pushed under a rug since she kind of quit her acting career. And like with the iCarly remake coming out and like the revamp of like all of these old Disney and Nickelodeon shows, like you see that she refused an offer and you're like, well, why? Like she was really popular in the show. It helped her whole career blow up. Why wouldn't she want to come back and do that? So after all that happened, she puts out a book and you're like, she had to get the shock value because she needed people to know her story.
It's literally, in my opinion, it's literally like a clickbait on a YouTube video. You have to give someone something crazy enough to make them want to click on it or open it or whatever, start. And honestly, here's the thing. I don't have trouble reading these kind of books because I've not experienced these things in my life, most of them. So for me, it's pretty easy for me to read this and not feel super upset. I definitely cried. I felt upset. I felt for Jenette. But if you struggle with some of these topics, I could see how if you read the first page, like maybe this was not for you. Like this could be so triggering. So I feel like it had a shock value. And I think personally, by reading just the first page, I was hooked. Like I read this book so fast and it was just, I don't know. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. And I think kind of in that same vein, like you saying, like if you do have these like traumas in your life and like they do parallel of like mommy issues or whatever, and like you have had like different kinds of abuse in your life, like it can be hard for you to read, but also at the same time it is so nice to know that somebody has gone through those same things as you. And like I mean sometimes like yes, you don't want to be triggered and you don't want to have like that immediate like shock response as a person, but in the same time, like you need to know that there's other people in the world that have that with you. And if you're able to be strong enough, because not everybody needs to be strong enough, you're allowed to sit with your trauma and you're allowed to not want to look into avenues of like other people that have dealt with that. But if you you do feel empowered to read other people's stories. I think that this was a really great one to read because
I agree.
She touches on the topics, and some of them she talks very surface level, but other ones she goes really in depth and talks about like how, from like a third party point of view, like how it affected the child and how it affected the teenager and how it affected her now. And I think that that's helpful to like kind of show like how she overcame and how with her experience with therapy and stuff, and like not wanting to be vulnerable to a therapist, especially after they started bringing up her mom, this quote unquote goddess in her life. I think that like seeing her transition like to hating therapy and firing that therapist, and then finding a new or the same therapist, I can't remember, finding that therapist that worked and like being able to work through those problems and eventually have her heal is really empowering to people that have gone through traumas like this, because then you'll want to kind of figure out how you can heal yourself, if not the same ways she did, but other avenues in which you can figure it out.
Yeah, and on the same vein, I completely agree, and I also see how this book can be so good for someone like me who has not experienced those things, to learn about them and to learn what other people experience. And not only that, how to support people who are experiencing that. Like maybe if you have friends in your life or family members who are struggling with one of
any of these things
in this book, this might be a way that you can understand the way they feel, and when you understand the way someone feels, you can support them better, just straight up.
So
absolutely. I feel like I don't know, I think it's a good for any reader, regardless of the fact that it can totally be hard to read.
And because it's a true story, I feel like it gives you so much real life experience, like you were saying. Like sometimes you don't know how to approach somebody that's struggling with an eating disorder, mental health, addiction, any of these many topics, but it does give you that vulnerability from somebody that's experiencing it firsthand and knowing how to approach them when they are. Because it talks about her relationship with Carly in the show, or Miranda. Talking about like Miranda and her relationship and how they like talked after the fact, and how like Miranda wasn't going through any of these things, and how she was able to like kind of help Jenette after. Like she was literally with Jenette when like she got the call that her mom was not doing well anymore and was going to pass away.
It gives you the perspective that you may not be able to get otherwise, I feel like.
Absolutely.
It's so vulnerable. I mean, not everyone in life who you experience goes through these things writes a book about it. Like,
exactly.
This is actually huge. So now I have a quote that I want to read, and then there's a question based on the quote. So in the book, Jenette says, "I'm becoming an angry person with no tolerance for anyone. I'm aware of this shift and yet have no desire to change it. If anything, I want it. It's armor. It's easier to be angry than to feel pain underneath it." Was her anger an avoidance mechanism, or did it ultimately save her?
I think that both can be true. I think that
2 things can be true at once, baby.
I think that it definitely was an avoidance mechanism. Like, she didn't want to have to deal with the pain. But I think that it did empower her enough when she realized that she was avoiding to save her life. And, like, when she was angry that, like, I don't know, that her mom was doing these things to her, it, like, gave her that fire inside of her to want to do better later.
Yeah, I think it did both at the same exact time. Like, it was her avoidance mechanism, and because she was able to avoid it, it saved her. For a long time, it seems like she just survived. She just avoided the bad. She just avoided the things that her mom was trying to do. I mean, you can't avoid it all, right? Like we were talking about, some of the things her mom was doing, it's inevitable and it's what happened, but she stayed, you know, I don't know what the word is, but she just stayed okay long enough until ultimately like her mom did pass away, and that's when she gained her freedom and like really found her voice truly and got to become her own person. So I feel like it was an avoidance mechanism that saved her. I think it was both.
And I feel like I've heard of like multiple different types of avoidance mechanisms. Like 3 that I can think of off the top of my head are like anger, absence, and anxious. Like you think of all of those things, and I think that if she would have gone with like the absent avoidance mechanism or the anxious avoidance mechanism, I think that would have been such a detriment to her. And I think that her choosing anger and like wanting to be angry at everything and everyone, including her mom, was so helpful to like help her see what was the overlying bad that she needed to overcome.
Yeah, I completely agree. So as a child, Jenette McCurdy adored her mother, though, and desperately always wanted to please her. And then as an adult, she finally realized all the ways in which her mother was abusive. Can you relate to wanting someone else to be happy so much that it comes at the expense of your own happiness?
Absolutely.
It's a tough question, but I feel like we can all relate in some way, big or small.
Yeah, I feel like I can definitely relate. And like I remember when I was younger, like I've always talked about how me and Kyle, like we've been together forever. Like we've been together since
Forever.
I was 14 years old. And like at 14 you're still a child. Like you don't really know anything.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people aren't allowed to quote unquote start dating until they're older because you are such like innocent little person.
Developing.
Yeah. And I feel like because I started dating Kyle so young and like of course like we're getting married and like we're all happy and whatever, I just like kind of formed this like codependency. And like I had friends and I knew like what things made me happy, but I felt like he would say something and like since I was so young and innocent and vulnerable, like he would say something and I would be like, oh, like I don't want to do that because you say you don't like it. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't mind it. Like, what if I'm okay with it?
Yes.
And it never became like a point where it was like he was like being abusive like Jenette's mother was. Of course not.
Right.
But it was like, well, I'd like to do things that make him happy because I want him to stay loving me. But at the same time, two things can be true at once.
Yes.
And you can do things that you want, even if that's not their favorite thing that you do. It still means that they love you as a person because you have these differences.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like a lot of us, I mean, I relate to this too. I've definitely wanted other people to be happy so much that it comes at the expense of my own happiness. I think that speaks to the people pleaser in everyone. Like, even if you say like, I'm not a people pleaser, maybe you are in some really, really minuscule way or to one certain person or one certain group. I think that can happen. And I definitely have experienced that, but also I feel like sometimes you don't notice it when it's happening.
Yeah.
So for instance, this is like such a random story that most people probably don't even know about me, but I was dating someone in high school, like my senior year or senior year of high school, who didn't want to ever leave Ohio, didn't want to ever leave the town, and didn't want me to do those things either. And so when we were dating and like thinking about what life could be like, they were really in a way trying to convince me like, oh, stay here, become this kind of job, like whatever. So I remember going home and telling my mom, like, I changed my mind. I think I want to become a teacher and I want to teach at the local schools and whatever. And my mom has always been like just the most supportive mom ever. Like, follow your dreams, follow your heart. You can do anything. Really supportive, but also very realistic, very logical, like will tell you straight up, so blunt. And this was the first time in my life ever that I can recall that she actually told me what to do. And she said, you cannot become a teacher. It's not you. You will not like it. You are not patient. You do not like dealing with kids. Like,
I love that she just told you, like, Arika, you're not a patient person. Don't do this.
Yeah, she was like, you wouldn't be able to handle it. And she gave me a scenario. I can't remember what it was, but she's like, imagine this happens at school. And I'm like, that is so fucking annoying. She's like,
absolutely.
Yeah, I know, because you can't, like, she's like, you don't like that environment and you've never wanted to be a teacher. So why are you doing this? And at the time that this was all happening, I had no idea that it was because he was convincing me. Like, I really just thought that's what I wanted, but it wasn't. And so I remember too, when we actually broke up, he broke up with me and he was like, I'm not breaking up with you because I don't like you or I don't want to see where this goes, whatever. I'm breaking up with you because you need to go to Ohio State and you need to live in a city and you need to travel the world and you need to have the job you want because that is what you need and I'm holding you back.
Well,
and
I'm like, yeah.
Like, whoa.
That is so
shocked.
Nice though, because like he could have manipulated you, and like again, that is a strong word, but he could have manipulated you into saying like, well, I know that this is probably what's best for us. You should stay here. But he was like empowered enough and you were empowered enough to know like, wow, this is not gonna work out. And like I mean, that's really, like, big of him to be able to say, because, like, when you're in a relationship, you don't ever want to be the reason that it ends, even if he was, like, I mean, obviously it wasn't you, like, you had to grow as a human, and, like, it wasn't him because he didn't necessarily want to grow in the ways that you wanted to grow, and it's, like, so nice to have that support and stuff from a partner that is now an ex-partner that was able to say these things to you.
No, it was completely unbelievable to me because also I think we were probably 17-ish or something like that. So it was like how I don't even know how he got to that conclusion himself, but I'm glad that he did, because if he didn't say those things to me, I probably would have just thought that that was the life I wanted, and I wouldn't have followed my dreams, and I wouldn't have become who I am, and I wouldn't have a freaking podcast with you.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have gotten this far.
Well, I was like, well, if he was saying those things, and like, if you weren't like the person that you are now, you probably would have been to my college, and we would have met each other earlier. I'm just kidding. I'm so glad with where you are, and I'm so happy that you grew into the person you are. But I was like, let me just say something funny.
Hilarious.
You were like,
no, that's hilarious.
Because you definitely would have went to the school that I went to.
That would have been so weird. Yeah, I did go to, do you care if I say where it is?
No.
Okay, I didn't know if you were private about it, but I did go to Bowling Green, Firelands campus. I don't know if you're familiar with it in Huron, Ohio. I did go there, actually. I was a student. I have my BGS UID still. It was so weird in high school.
You literally would have went to Bowling Green for college if you were like, I'm going to be a teacher.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so all that to say that, like, even if you want someone else's happiness so much that it comes at the expense of your own, you don't even always have to know you're doing it.
Yeah, well, and also if you want somebody's happiness so much that you're getting rid of yours, what happens if worse comes to worse and they break up with you or they leave or whatever?
Like, where does that leave you?
Yeah, because like you're just going to become a shell of the person that you are, and you're never going to be able to grow into a more interesting person ever.
Yeah, I completely agree. So the next question I really, really like. It says, despite the sometimes disturbing content of the book, it's also really funny in parts. So why do you think McCurdy chose to joke about some of her experiences? I feel like this is such another coping mechanism.
Absolutely. If you can't laugh at the hard times, how are you going to survive?
Make it. Yeah, I feel like that's also like, I don't know, but in my family personally, like my family, and then also in Angelo's family and being around you and all of those people, I feel like everyone can take a good joke. And I think that's so important to getting through life.
Yeah.
Like anything. The happy, the sad, the miserable, the disturbing, like all of it. I think humor is a really good and mostly safe coping mechanism that is pretty widely used.
I think that I really relate to those parts of the book because anytime like I've had like hard things happen or I've been like really upset or in my feelings or I felt like I've like something terrible has happened, I always use humor as a coping mechanism. Like I will make the darkest jokes. Like it is so bad. And I mean, I work in a really sensitive field now and like I'll read medical reports and like to get through the day, like, I mean, we sit at work and we talk about like these sexual assault medical reports all day, every day. Like I'm literally reading the worst trauma of people's lives, but also sometimes like you'll get these medical reports that have like funny little nuances to them. Like, I mean, it's not funny ever, but like, for example, like you'll get just like these things that you know couldn't have happened because the person is like mentally unwell or they have like schizophrenia or something like that. And you read it and you're like, that's kind of funny because like you just have to like, I mean, it's so disturbing.
Cope.
It's it's so disturbing that you like read this and you're like, wow, that person is like, they do have like these hallucinations and their schizophrenia is uncontrolled or whatever. And you read it and you're like, wow, that's like really disturbing. But at the same time, like if they're like, Ice-T is my pimp or whatever, like things like that, like you just have to like have a little giggle.
It's so far unimaginable that it's like the only way that you can understand it or like air quote understand it is to laugh.
Yeah. And like other things that we'll say like sometimes is like just like our little like intrusive thoughts, like so we'll get like swabs as evidence and stuff, like vaginal swabs, anal swabs and stuff like that, and we're like, my intrusive thought is to pick my ear with this. Like
literally intrusive thoughts,
like of course we're never gonna do it because like we're ethical, we're not gonna ruin the evidence, but at the same time it's like, what if I just
everyone has them. Like, everyone has intrusive thoughts, and saying them is one thing, acting them is another. In my opinion, like saying them out loud can sometimes make everyone around you feel a little more sane. Like, okay, absolutely. We're all thinking the same thing.
And then some things, like our biggest one is like we use bleach and ethanol. So like ethanol is like alcohol, and we use those to clean our surfaces and our utensils. And sometimes we'll look at people and be like, is it a bleach day or an ethanol day? Like, do you want to drink the bleach or do you want to drink the alcohol? Like, what's happening with your mental health today?
Literally. Yeah, I think it's totally okay. And I also think like that's why she had a joke about it.
You have
I could be wrong, but that's my thought. I think it's an easy way to cope, and sometimes things are funny.
Absolutely. Like you, like if something ever in your life has been like traumatic or crazy or whatever, you look back on it after you've started to heal and you're like, wow, that was so silly. Like you're like, Well, like you in your instance, in your example that you brought up earlier, like you're thinking about like, oh, I really wanted to be a teacher for this one person. And you look back and you're like, that's hilarious.
Like what? Like,
why did I want to do that?
Why would I want that? Yeah, literally. Yeah, I agree. So in your opinion, is it okay to feel, quote, happy that someone has died?
I think like this is a really tough question to answer because you don't want to sound like insensitive and be like, yes, it's okay if you feel happy that someone's died. But like if you think in like the bigger scheme of things, like just like dramatic example, like are you happy that Hitler is dead? Probably yeah, because he caused such mass like I don't know, mass
destruction.
Yeah, destruction. Yeah. And like, yeah, of course, like I'm happy that he is no longer like causing that, but am I happy that a human is no longer on this earth? And like, I don't know, but at the same time, like, you know that they're not going to harm anybody anymore, so it can make you feel relief. I feel like relief is a better word than happy.
I like that. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I feel like it's such a tough question, and I also think in my personal opinion, I do think it's okay to feel happy. I do think it's okay to feel relief, but I think there's a line that can be crossed where that person's not here anymore and they can't speak for themselves anymore.
Exactly.
And so I think that there are things that maybe could be better left unsaid, or like I have a hard time relating to if someone were to tell us stories and stories and stories about someone who's passed away, they can't defend themselves, they can't tell their side. There's two sides to every story, and somewhere in the middle there's a truth.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's always hard in that sense, but I do think it's okay generally to feel like happy or relieved, especially if it's your abuser. Like I can't imagine the sense of relief you'd have to know like that person can never ever
hurt you again.
Ever again.
Yeah.
Ever. Like quite literally. So I don't know. I think it's a tough question, but yeah, I do think there's a line for me.
Yeah, and I feel like the way to make people feel like it's not as divisive or whatever would just to be like, well, can you feel relief? Like, I even think like if you have a good relationship with the person, but you like you're their caretaker, for example, like when my mom and my grandma, like my grandma was my mother's mom, and she had to move in with us, and she had to take, like, my mom had to take care of her until we ended up putting her in a nursing home. And like, of course my mom is not happy that my grandma died ever. Like, they were best friends, they were so close, and like I was so close with my grandma and everything. But at the end of the day, you know that you don't have to take care of them, and you don't have to feel that burden of their pain any longer, because you know that their pain is no longer there.
Burden is the word that I was going to say too, right? And then you said it right at the same time I was thinking it. I was like, sometimes and it's not always a person, right? It's not like, oh, my mom is such a burden to me, but maybe the act of serving them is a burden, or the act of doing XYZ is a burden to you. And I think it's okay to have those feelings, and to also know, like, not only is something not a burden to you anymore, but that person may also be in a happier place than they were once.
Yeah,
like,
and like the pain that was burdening them is no longer happening, because they've been able to release all their pain and release all of their troubles and the weight that's been on their shoulders for so long. And like, if they are unwell, they can just release all of that. Yeah,
it's a tough topic in general, but I have one question, and it's the last question, and I think that it's a good one. So what was your favorite part of the book, or the part that most affected you, or both?
I think that my favorite part was like the funny part nearing the end when like Steven was his name, right? The guy that was like, okay.
That thought he was God.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny, and I think that was probably my favorite part. It didn't affect me the most, because I just think it was like the comedic relief at the end, as she was like coming to terms with all of her abuse and her trauma, and she was like looking outwardly more now instead of looking inwardly, because she was healing. And she was like, what the heck is this guy doing? He thinks he's God. And then she was like, bro, you gotta get help.
It was such a like weird, the whole book, I say the word weird, I don't know if I'm even using the word correctly, but I'm like, it was just such a weird thing that happened. It was just like, I read all of this and there's still more stuff.
No,
like,
literally.
what is going on?
Because she was like, whatever. She got this show in Canada. She was filming. She's like, oh my goodness, this producer is so hot. I think he's so hot. I want to like go on a date with him or whatever. And then they start dating, and she's like, oh, this is so fun and whatever. And then he starts to show schizophrenic tendencies and starts to like get to that point, and then eventually gets diagnosed. And then he completely goes like haywire. I don't know if that's the right word to use, because you don't want to call somebody crazy, but like, like he goes like, I mean, off the rails a little bit. Like he starts having these delusions and he starts thinking like, wow, that, like, I don't know, Jenette has to take a step back and be like, I thought my problems were bad. He thinks he's Jesus Christ. Like,
yeah, and it was actually honestly kind of eye-opening and cool to see her be able to identify that, though, because you read the whole book, seeing her be manipulated through her whole life and not realizing some of the problems she had. So for her to, like, actually recognize that on her own terms and fully, like, be aware that something was off was actually pretty impressive. Actually,
and like empowering to her as well, because like I said, she was healing herself, and like being able to recognize others' problems or their traumas is like such a big step in healing as well, because if you can't recognize their problems, then how can you know that you're fully like invested in your own healing?
Yeah, totally.
What was your favorite part? I want to know.
Yeah, okay. My favorite part, and my part is kind of general, but my favorite part of the book, I think, was the friendship that she had with Miranda Cosgrove.
Yeah.
Just in general, because I think it was like that little piece of faith and humanity restored that we all needed.
And normalcy.
Yeah, and normalcy, because everyone in the book had their own things. Her parents, her grandparents, her brothers, her relationships, like every single relationship she had in this book, aside from Miranda, that I can remember, felt heavy. It felt like there was something in every relationship, right? Like something different, some other obstacle. But with Miranda, it seemed easy. Like I actually pulled something from Super Summary that talks about when Miranda left a gift basket in her room, and it had, this is what it said. Her mother picks through the foods Jenette can or cannot eat, and Jenette discovers a gift basket from her co-star Miranda Cosgrove, filled with movie theater candy, and it also contains a $100 gift card to a movie theater. Jenette is shocked to see a gift card worth that much. Jenette's mother tells Jenette that Miranda's character, Carly, isn't nearly as good as her character. Jenette thinks about how she has never actually had another child star be kind to her. So I thought that was, first of all, monumental for her to say that, like, she can't remember a time someone else was kind to her on a set. That's sad, but also, like, her mom after that took her to the mall to get a gift for Miranda, like to get a thank you gift back to her. And it says, Jenette and her mother seek a thank you gift for Miranda at the mall. Jenette's mother suggests that a stuffed panda and a fuzzy journal. And Jenette privately feels anxious about the gift not meeting Miranda's standards because Miranda's gift was so generous, so expensive. And I remember in the book when Jenette gave her the gift, Miranda the gift, Miranda was so thankful and like just so sweet, and it was just really cute to see like she didn't care how much it cost. Like it was nice that someone did a nice thing for her, and it just, I don't know, I think it spoke to like true friendship.
Yeah, and like she probably knew deep down like Jenette was not doing well. Like when somebody's suffering from eating disorders, you can tell that like outwardly, not always, but sometimes, and especially in the severe circumstance that Jenette was in. I think that you probably could have noticed from an outside perspective that either her mom was overbearing or that she was struggling internally with like all of these different like conflicts.
Any of the one things.
Yeah.
She could have identified one of something.
And I think that because she came from such a different like home life and like having like that small house with like 7 people living in it and like not having very much money and stuff. And like I think that Miranda probably saw from like the outsider's perspective, like her mom doesn't know how to gift well because she's still so frugal in a sense that like she's not willing to spend the money even though they're getting it now. Like she's a series regular and everything, but she was like, I know that she wanted to gift me something because she felt extreme love and like happiness that I gave her something, and so she wanted to show me back. And she was like, maybe this is just like the best way that her family knew how. And it's really like endearing, like just to see like she was like, oh yeah, like this is what she could do and I'm going to be happy about it. Even if I'm just going to throw this in the back of my car and never look at it again, I'm just going to say thank you and move on.
Yeah, I think that overall theme was my favorite part. Just Miranda and her being like true friends. Miranda was like always there for her, even when Jenette was shitty in a way, or like struggling with addiction, drinking, like doing scary things, doing complicated things that Miranda like may not have understood, but she kind of stuck by her. And I feel like in a way, and I could be wrong, but I'm just concluding this on my own, like in a way it seems like the friendship that Jenette had with Carly could have really saved her at a time that she needed it.
Absolutely.
Like, it gave Jenette some more hope than she was getting anywhere else. And I think Miranda also just treated her normal, right? Like just treated her like any normal person, didn't really pity her, didn't say anything about problems. She'd talk to her if she asked, but otherwise she just treated her like with respect and like a normal human. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you didn't have that person to be, I can't remember the word, but like to be, I don't know, just like caring and like give you love when you need it the most.
Yeah, I think it was really awesome. So that was definitely my favorite part. And I think maybe it didn't affect me the most, but it definitely stuck with me as one of the top things. Because I don't know, it really just kind of shined through as a light of happiness in all of the dark stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the part that really affected me the most was probably the part in the, I mean, it was kind of scattered throughout the book, but I would say it was really heavily talked about in the beginning, was the relationship between Jenette's mom and dad, and how her mother was genuinely abusive to her father as well, like throwing pans, throwing things, kicking things in the kitchen, and like screaming at her dad when he would just come home late from work. And he was like a manual worker, like he did work, like I don't know, like he would just come home late and he would be tired and she would be like, why are you doing this? Why are you sitting on the couch? And then like throw things at him and like tell him to get out of the house and make him sleep in the car for days on end. And I'm like, that is just like, it's so impactful, because you think like, even if you have like any sort of family trauma between like your parents, like if they were like, even if they just got divorced at a young age or you never knew another parent, you can like look into this and see like reflections in your own life. Even if you had a good family dynamic, you can see like, wow, like the way that this family dynamic works is so completely opposite of mine, and it's so impactful to everybody reading. Or you can empathize with it if you were somebody that also had to deal with like turmoil in your family dynamics.
Yeah. I think overall, as we've said 100 million times throughout this whole entire episode, this book was impactful is a great word. It was like really impactful and really eye-opening, and it provided great perspective in so many ways. And I just think it could be beneficial for anyone to read this in any situation. Like, personally, I don't know what I was actually gonna look it up, but I forgot. I don't know what you rated it on Goodreads, but I did rate it 5 out of 5.
I feel like I might have. I don't remember.
I feel like I try not to give 5 out of 5s to every book, because then it loses its value, but I'm actually pretty bad about just giving everything 5. I'm like, oh, so good. But this one truly, like, if people ask me like, what are your must reads, like tell me something I have to read, this would be up there for me, because I think not only is it different, I don't personally read a lot of memoirs, especially celebrity memoirs, but I think this one was so not that, like it was so
and it wasn't written from like Jenette's perspective now. It was written like in a past perspective, and I feel like that's not how a lot of memoirs are written. I feel like it's always first person talking about what happened in the past, but she wrote as a kid, she wrote as a teenager, she wrote as an adult, and she wrote as the emotions felt during those times.
It was just, I think, incredible. I really recommend reading it. If you don't read it, hopefully we provided you with good insight and you like got what you needed from it, because it's still, I don't know, such a great find. And also, not to mention, like, this book broke records, dude. Like, no one could get their hands on a copy of this book for so long. Personally, I did not get my copy for the longest time because it was sold out everywhere, because I didn't pre-order, which apparently I should have done. Was unprepared. But yeah, I loved it. I would recommend it. Anything else you want to say about the book?
I don't think so. I think, like, I'll just say it one more time. Like, if you relate to any of the traumas that we talked about in this, and you've been trying to think about reading the book, and you still listen to this episode, even if it was like triggering to you, I think, like, if you can find like that, I don't know, that like strength. That strength to just read somebody else's perspective and like how she healed. I think that it's so eye-opening, and it's so, like, I don't know, it's just so powerful, because if you have gone through these things, like, yes, she talks about the ins and outs of those traumas, but also she talks about how she overcame it. And even if you just read the last third of the book, I think that it would be so helpful to understand the growth aspect of everything and like how you can heal after.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiment. I totally agree. And I think at this point, whether you decide to read it or not, I don't think it's ruined either way. Like
No.
if you were to read it, you would still gain so much. We did not touch on every topic. We didn't even get close. But also, if you decide not to read it, I think we did talk about a lot of the most impactful parts. So either way, I think it's a good call. But thank you guys for listening to this because I loved doing this.
I do too. I'm so excited. We have another one in the works.
Fun.
It's coming like mid-May. We're not going to tell you the book.
Club number 2.
I feel like we shouldn't tell them the book. I think it should always be a surprise.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Yeah, we'll have book club number 2 coming in May. That's next month.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, you guys. So maybe we'll have a monthly or a bi-monthly. It's a lot of reading.
I know.
But yeah, we're really excited about the next book. For the record, like we read this one a while ago. I'm glad my mom died, but we're going to read the other one a little bit closer to the episode,
neither of us have started it yet. So it's going to be fresh.
Yes. Yeah. I passed Marissa my copy of this book. So we kind of had like a little bit of a delay.
Yes.
There, if that makes sense. So this next one we're going to read at the same time. It's going to be so fun. And yeah, so thank you guys for listening to this episode. If you want to connect with us on Goodreads, if you want to see like our ratings on books or like read with us or join our book clubs.
We'll put the links in our bio.
After, you guys hear this, let us know if you like it and definitely comment because in the future, if you ever want to join in on our book clubs, we definitely could share the book and then people could read it too.
Absolutely.
And then come to the book club together. So yeah, we'll definitely do more of this in the future. But again, thank you for listening to this episode and to all of our episodes. Because of you, we were able to do an ad and it's just really exciting.
It is.
Like in full transparency, we've only made a few cents, but it's the coolest few cents I've ever made in my life.
Absolutely.
Like, I cannot stress that enough. I'm so pumped about it. But with that, we're going to end this episode because we have been talking for an hour about this book, which I'm not mad about, but you guys probably have to go do your normal life thing. So thanks for spending your Wednesday with us. Follow us on Instagram at We Run on Coffee. We have new posts every week when we have an episode and some bonus posts here and there. Follow us on Spotify or wherever you find your podcasts. Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Public Radio, CastBox, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere that you listen. And rate us and give us 5 stars. We would absolutely love if you did that.
Absolutely. Please. And send us an email. Send us an email if you want.
Yeah, hit us up. Our email is werunoncoffeepodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to connect. And I think that's the whole spiel. So
I think that's it.
I'm Arika.
I'm Marissa. And we run on coffee.
See you guys.